We are living in a divided world. From the day we are born, every person is assigned a specific yet complex role based on one thing: gender. Throughout our lives, we are conditioned by our environment to think and behave in certain ways that adhere to our gender identities. In this day and age, these identities are expressed largely through technology. Early internet theorists believed that the web would give people the freedom to break free from gender roles. Based on what we know today, has the internet done this? To explore this issue, I talked to Upchurch, public speaking professor and gender studies scholar here at Pitt. He explained to me his theory that the internet has merely allowed people to replicate pre-existing gender roles, and also that these assigned roles can be both oppressive and destructive to us all.
So it's interesting. We've learned in the last few decades how to make different choices in terms of face-to-face interactions, but online communication is such a new thing still. It's still, the meaning of it and the ways that we do it, the forms of online communication are still being negotiated. And so what that does is it shifts our focus toward learning those, and when we do that, we have a tendency, I think, to revert back to our sort of reflexive ways of performing our gender. And so online communication has exacerbated, if anything, the division between the genders, which is really interesting since there are no bodies to attach that to. How do I be a man online? Or how do I perform the same types of female roles that I'm expected to perform in face-to-face interactions online?
How has the emergence of big data reinforced previous gender roles?
It started back with magazines and radio and television and demographics, right? Demographics cut you up into you're male, you're 20 to 34, you live in an upper middle class neighborhood, you own a Subaru, right? That's a demographic. And so that clearly cuts you into male and female. Well, then they got into, then that evolved into psychographics. And psychographics were more about, it was still about where you lived and who you were, but it was more about your practices and the way that you viewed the world. So if you owned these certain products and lived in these certain places, it's very likely that you view the world in a particular way. So they would chop you up into a psychographic and then market to you that way. Big data is the next evolution of that, because big data will track every purchase and every site that you visit and everything you've ever done online. Facebook tracks the things that you type into messages. It also tracks the things that you type and then delete before you push send. And so all that's doing is reinforcing the things that you think about yourself, right? And since that comes from these sort of pre-existing choices that we have, I'm male or I'm female, or the expectations that the people we're communicating with have about how we should behave, then big data, all big data is doing is collecting those little bits of what Pierre Bourdieu would call habitus and putting a number on them and putting them into a database and then utilizing those things.
Just last month, Facebook added 57 new gender options, whereas before it was just male and female. It may seem that the internet is promoting gender equality. However, online communication may be less liberating than you would think, especially in places like social media.
We choose to perform and portray our identities as gendered human beings. Well, those choices were predetermined. They're determined before the internet happened, right? So, for instance, I have a colleague who's gender queer in face-to-face interactions, but online she almost always portrays herself as a female or identifies with female imagery and things like that. Look at the online community that I'm studying, the percentage of lurkers is higher amongst females than it is amongst males. There are a lot of women that don't speak in online communication, even though you would think it's a different kind of space or maybe even a safer space for them to do so.
Just because there are an abundance of choices online doesn't mean that people have the ability to truly do what they want and be who they want to be.
The same misogyny and same prejudices that occur in everyday life in other forums, they are replicated in online communication. And that's really what I've found as a gender studies scholar, as well as a rhetorician. What I found is that patterns of behavior, patterns of interaction related to gender haven't really changed that much with online communication. They've changed form, but not kind.
So it is clear that gender norms are prevalent in online forums. What we often fail to recognize is that they can be extremely oppressive. This is something that interested Will in his studies.
So that's part of what my work does, is intervenes and says gender doesn't just oppress women, right? Gender norms are oppressive to all people, even men that benefit from them, because men certainly benefit from patriarchy, but they also are constrained in ways that may disadvantage them as well, personally, psychologically. That comes from my father's death. He committed suicide after a heart attack, and I think what drove him to that point was the fact that his heart attack had left him unable to work and support the family. And so there's a direct link in my mind between masculinity, masculine norms, and harm that's coming to real people. A lot of men and a lot of women want to be different people than they are, but they don't know how and feel like they can't be because there's no support for it.
So the internet itself does not directly change gender roles. It merely provides a space to replicate them. This also means that sexism doesn't stop at the keyboard. However, being aware of stereotypes can help users see the oppression in their own lives. Gender is a side effect of biology, and it does not determine worth or ability. Only when we start treating